Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into the fascinating structural economics and, frankly, the psychology of elder millennials, specifically those of you born around 1991. If you're part of this cohort or if you manage a team full of them, listen up, because what we're about to unpack is going to completely reframe your entire career compass. We're going to explore how graduating into one of the absolute worst labor markets in modern history fundamentally wired your work identity, and more importantly, how you can actually leverage that exact rocky start to your massive advantage today. To figure out where we are, we have to rewind a bit. You didn't just graduate into a run-of-the-mill recession. You stepped out into the formal workforce straight into the teeth of the global financial crisis. Between 2009, which was the absolute rock bottom of the crash, and that notoriously sluggish recovery dragging all the way through 2013, you entered a structural earthquake. It shifted the ground beneath your feet from day one. So let's really get into the reality of those specific macroeconomic conditions. We call this the GFC entry scar, because entering the labor market in that specific window isn't just some bad luck you eventually bounce back from. It leaves a lasting imprint. It permanently alters your risk tolerance, how you view your own career, and your baseline expectations of what a company actually owes you. And look, this isn't just a subjective feeling. Economists actually have a very specific, kind of brutal term for this: cohort scarring. It's defined as the long-term depression of earnings and career outcomes for groups entering the market during recessions. Basically, the economic weather on the exact day you got your first job produced a permanent, measurable drag on your lifetime earnings. To put some real numbers to that pain, the research on the 1991-born cohort in developed economies shows a massive initial wage deficit of 9 to 15% compared to people who entered the workforce just a couple of years before the recession. And here's the real kicker. While that gap does shrink over the course of your career, it never actually fully closes. You literally started significantly behind the starting line. You remember the structural grind of that 2009 to 2013 market? It was rough. Unemployment was hovering around 9 to 10% in the US. We saw insane degree inflation where suddenly you needed a master's degree just to land an entry-level admin job. First jobs were totally disconnected from what you actually studied, making chronic underemployment totally normal. The gig economy wasn't some cool side hustle yet. It was sheer survival. You learned very early on that corporate loyalty was basically a myth, and you were forced to figure out remote work tools out of pure necessity, way before the rest of the world caught on. All of this built a psychological baseline that can pretty much be summed up in just 5 words: grateful to have a job. Because jobs were so scarce during those super formative early years, a huge portion of elder millennials still carry that exact sentiment today, often completely unconsciously. It's like this persistent background hum in your professional identity, secretly dictating how you interact with your bosses and how you value yourself in the open market. But here is where the story completely shifts. Those exact adverse conditions, actually, scratch that, they were brutal, but they forged your absolute greatest competitive advantages. The scarcity, the daily grind, the rapid tech shifts. They didn't just scar you. They built a highly unique generational edge that the modern knowledge economy is practically begging for right now. Just think about the dynamic in a typical modern office. On one end, you've got baby boomer leadership who are deeply accustomed to analog institutional systems. On the other end, you have Gen Z staff operating in a fully digital, highly fluid reality. Because the 1991 cohort is fluent in both those old legacy systems and the newest digital tools, you are the ultimate intergenerational bridge. You naturally occupy this translator role, and let me tell you, that is one of the highest value positions you can hold in today's economy. And then there's your brain wiring. You have an incredible capacity for sustained deep work. Because your attention formation happened pre-internet, meaning before the era of infinite scrolling algorithms and ubiquitous smartphones, you actually possess the neural architecture to just sit down and focus. Researchers are noting that this deep work capacity is increasingly scarce, making it incredibly economically valuable in a wildly distracted world. Because you navigated so much economic chaos right out of the gate, you metabolize uncertainty way better than cohorts who only knew stable times. When things hit the fan, you don't freeze up. You also have this amazing adaptive collaboration style. You aren't fiercely tied to rigid hierarchies, like the boomer default, but you also aren't totally allergic to structure like some Gen Z tendencies. You flow fluidly between the two, armed with a broad cross-system literacy that gives you a massive perspective advantage over narrow specialists. Now, as incredible as that edge is, it's not all smooth sailing. We have to talk about the risks. Surviving that financial crisis left some psychological hangovers that might actually be trapping you right now. We need to shine a light on these hidden mid-career risk patterns so you can catch them before they completely derail your upward trajectory. That deeply ingrained grateful to have a job mindset has very real financial consequences. The data reveals a pretty stark contrast. Gen X is out there negotiating their salaries significantly more often, while millennials are systematically under-negotiating. You are literally leaving money on the table because of the trauma of your entry market. It creates a clear pattern of undervaluation where you just aren't asserting your true worth. And that mindset naturally leads to institutional overcommitment. The numbers show elder millennials have way above average institutional loyalty. Now, loyalty is a fantastic trait, right? But here, it creates an asymmetric vulnerability. When you pour extreme loyalty into organizations that, mathematically speaking, do not reciprocate, you are exposing yourself to massive career risk. This perfectly explains the mid-career plateau that so many of you are hitting right now in your mid-30s. Step 1, you did what you were told. Put your head down, earn the credentials, built the seniority. Step 2, you slam right into a structural ceiling and suddenly feel totally stuck. But step 3 is where you take your power back. You have to proactively reposition. Feeling stuck is a structural issue built into corporate ladders, but navigating out of it, that requires ditching that passive, overly grateful mindset and taking active control of your path. So, how do we avoid that plateau? We need to map out the exact environments where your incredibly unique skills will actually be celebrated. It's not just about chasing a slightly higher salary, it's about structural alignment. Let's look at what the optimal career environment actually looks like for the 1991 cohort. When we break down this structural alignment, it gets really clear. Institutionally, you're going to thrive in places like universities, hybrid public-private setups, or knowledge sector NGOs, places that actually value deep expertise. Structurally, you crave flexible autonomy. You want clear goals but total freedom on how you get there. You respond best to consultative leadership and bidirectional mentorship, where your hard-won experience is respected. And finally, mission alignment. You don't need blind passion, but a moderate to high level of purpose is absolutely crucial for you to feel fully engaged. You survived the GFC entry scar. You built an undeniably powerful generational edge out of severe adversity. So I want to leave you with this one question to chew on. Are you still passively waiting for advancement, just hoping your loyalty will magically be rewarded? Or are you ready to proactively reposition yourself into an environment that actually values your deep work, your unmatched adaptability, and your intergenerational translation skills? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you walk away ready to navigate your career with some serious newfound clarity.